One word to describe every projected starter on the Texas football team heading into the season. On today's episode of Locked on Longhorns.
You are Locked on Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis and Lacey Butler, your host. Today's episode of Locked on Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started through September 2nd. Make sure you're hopping on that, getting that free trial of Sunday Ticket so y'all can see Bijan this year, Adonai Mitchell this year, Xavier Worthy with the Chiefs, Jordan Whittington with the Rams. It's a lot of Longhorns in the NFL now that you can tune into Sunday Ticket and watch. So make sure you do that. On today's episode of Locked on Longhorns, me and Lacey will be discussing over all three segments, one word to describe every projected starter for the Longhorns. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked on Longhorns, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. A few things before we get into it. We may say more than one word, right?
Yeah.
We do understand the assignment for sure. You know what I mean? But, some of these players may be so phenomenal that we have to use more than one word, maybe a phrase to describe them. Also, I want to emphasize projected starter, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to go over the 22 players that, based on everything we've heard, we think will be the first group out there. So if we don't mention your favorite player or we don't mention somebody that you think will start, just understand that these are the projected starters, the 22 players we think will be the first team offense and the first team defense. Also, one more thing. I mentioned 22 players, so this obviously excludes the best hair in the business, Bert Auburn. You know what I mean? Whoever the punter is going to be, and our kick returner and our punt returner. I am not biased against special teams. I have nothing against the special teams unit. In fact, Bert Auburn is my fake favorite player on the team, right? You know what I mean? So, y'all like offense and defense.
That
right?
works.
You don't want to hear one word to describe, Bert Auburn. But I guess if I had to describe it real quick, it would be voluptuous, right? He has that voluptuous hair, just flowing from his shout out. I got a thesaurus like brain, you know what I'm saying? So
that's not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
You know what I'm saying? So shout out that beautiful hair of Bert Auburn. All right, here we go. So over the next three segments, one word to describe every projected starter for the Longhorns. It's tough coming up with content sometimes, man. So I was just like, we're just gonna do it today, man. We're gonna have some fun.
But
I like
here we go. I like this because it gets you more up to date and in tune with the guys that are your projected starters. It gets you looking at their names a little bit more, looking and seeing how you're feeling about them specifically. So not just the team as a whole. So I liked it because it got me really looking deep into the different positions and everything like that. So I enjoyed it. I'm with it.
Yeah, hopefully we make you laugh once or twice throughout the show. So here we go. Starting with the quarterback position, starting with the offense. Lacey, your word to describe Quinn Ewers is?
Mine starts off a little basic, but I just said leader. Because I just think Quinn is really, really embracing and stepping into that role a lot more this year. Right before we started recording, I actually saw a tweet or something where somebody was talking about a press conference that Sark had, and he had mentioned that Quinn had a players-only meeting already, heading into the season. So I think we're seeing a lot of really big steps from Quinn from a leadership perspective. And so that's the word that I think is really embracing him this season. I think that's the role that he's really stepping into. There was a lot of words, though. That's the hard part. Is like there's so many different things that you can describe these guys. So like where did your head go?
For Quinn, I said effortless. I think when he's throwing the football, like his delivery, his accuracy, his motion, just everything about it, like he looks like he was more in a play quarterback. So I think that when he's on and, when he's in a good place, when he's firing on all cylinders, we saw in that Oklahoma game when they won 49-0, the two Alabama games, it just looked effortless at times for Quinn Ewers. So like I said, he was just born to throw the football. My word for Quinn is effortless. Jaden Blue What's your word to describe him?
Shockwaves. I think that he is going to be sending shockwaves throughout college football this season. I am very, very, very excited about Jaden Blue headed into the 2024 season. I've been singing his praises all off season. I'm super, super excited, and even more excited now. Obviously, you never want to see running backs go down or anything, but I'm excited to see what he's able to do as that workhorse back. And I really think he is going to surprise a lot of people, being that featured back. So, not only shockwaves, sending shockwaves through the waves of college football and the fan bases and everything like that, putting people on the map on who he is, but I just think that he is just going to shock himself, shock the fan base, shock everything. Shockwaves is the word that I used for Jaden Blue.
Right. I went with Lamborghini. All right. I said Lamborghini. And when you look at Trey Wisner, when you look at Jared Gibson, those are your Toyota Camrys. Those are your Ford F-150s. You know what I mean? Reliable. Just getting those tough yardage, right? Or those tough miles, right? But Jaden Blue is the one you want to pull out the garage for special occasions. Now, of course, because of the injuries, we're going to have to drive the Lamborghini a little bit more this year, right? But, I just think when you look at Jaden Blue, like, that's a Lamborghini, right? It just looks good when you're in it. Jaden Blue looks good when the ball is in his hands. And that's just something you want to get in and go fast, right? And obviously, Jaden Blue with the ball in his hands is pretty fast. So, like I said, we're going to have to put a little bit more miles on the Lamborghini this year than we expected. But, yeah, Jaden Blue, that's my word, Lamborghini, right? The next one is Isaiah Bond. What you got for Isaiah Bond?
4th and 31. That's
my God. That's literally what I have. And just so y'all don't think this is like whatchamacallit, she wrote hers on her phone. I wrote mine down.
Nope, mine's on my phone. I swear.
Y'all see it right there on YouTube, 4th and 31. That's
mine.
Crazy.
You can't see mine because of the friggin' screen, but I have it. 4th and 31.
Y'all believe us, right? We didn't coordinate on these, but y'all wrote 4th and 31.
That's crazy. I was wondering if that was gonna happen, but no, 4th and 31. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I feel like this one's pretty self-explanatory, but I think that that's going to be his big value in our offense is going to be those contested catches, those 50-50 balls. I think he could really end up being a big target for Quinn in the red zone when it comes in that aspect. So why did you pick that, though? I'm wondering if you were on the same wavelength as me, because obviously we're in the same brain.
Yeah, I just think that, like, that play, like, when I think of Isaiah Bond, I just think of it. And, you know, I'm not sure why. Like, I don't mean to be, like, the Texas guy, but, like, I feel like that play is not talked about enough. One, it's just purely one of the best plays in the history of college football, but it also altered the history of college football. If Alabama loses that game, there's no way they make the playoffs with two losses, right? Even if they still make the SEC championship game. So now, then you either have Georgia in the playoffs, and they probably three-peat, because I would assume they beat Michigan, or you have Florida State in the playoffs, and we never have to hear again about how they got snubbed, right? So literally, Isaiah Bond on 4th and 31 in the Iron Bowl changed the course of college football history, right? I just think it's a huge play, right? So when I think about Isaiah Bond, I think 4th and 31. Like, it's like when you think of Vince Young, you think of him strolling in the end zone on 4th down. When I think of Isaiah Bond, I think of 4th and 31. It was just that big of a play, but it's crazy that we both came up with that. Silas Bolden.
I said worthy 2.0. I think that he is, he can truly do it all. You know, he's got the speed, he's got the physicality, his route running is really fluid, and I really think he can be kind of Sark's secret weapon in that offense this upcoming season. I'm really excited to see what Sark is able to do with his versatility. And, you know, coming from being a wide receiver one at Oregon State, you know, he's used to having a majority of the carries. He's used to being that workhorse receiver and everything like that. So I'm excited to see what Sark is able to do and scheme for a Silas Bolden. So what about you?
Everywhere. My word for Silas Bolden is everywhere. He's going to be everywhere on this offense. And not even just offense, special teams, right? Whether it's punt return, kick return, you know, X wide receiver, Z wide receiver, wide receiver in the backfield. Like, just wherever Steve Sarkisian can get him the ball, he will get Silas Bolden the ball. And, you know, he may be the smallest player on the team or one of the smallest players on the team, but his game is a lot bigger than his stature. So everywhere, I think he's going to be, you know, everywhere on this offense. DeAndre Moore, this is where some people may disagree with us, but we saw in the last scrimmage, he was with the ones in the slot. So that's all we have to go off right now. What's your word for DeAndre Moore?
Reliable. Oh, reliable. I said, I feel like he has become a very consistent, reliable target for Quinn. That's at least what we've heard from scrimmages, what we've heard from him during the spring. That's just something that we've consistently heard about him, is that he's a reliable player, a reliable teammate. He's consistently talked about as first guy in, last guy out. He's dedicated to his craft. I just felt like reliable, whatever you want to call it, was a very, very good word for DeAndre Moore. Even though we haven't necessarily seen it on the field, I definitely think that this could be a year where he shows just how trustworthy he can be for Quinn and Sark. But I don't know. What about you? I don't know. I feel like my words are starting off really basic, but
I mean, this is one word, right? So
yeah.
I went with savvy. I think when you look at the way he runs his routes, right, he's a savvy route runner, right? He just does such a good job of getting open. You have to do that in the slot. But also, I think he's business savvy, right? As a true freshman, he opens up a food truck selling turkey burgers in Austin. Like, that's something I never even would have thought about. You know what I mean? So he's just savvy, right? Business savvy and football savvy. One more before the break. Gunnar Helm, right? Projected starting tight end. What's your word for Gunnar Helm?
Pro. I just said he is a pro in the way he's a pro all around. He's a pro in the way he prepares. He's a pro in the way that he approaches the game. He's a pro in the way that he is consistent in his diet and his workouts. And like I said, and just the way that he approaches the position and approaches the game of football. He's where he needs to be when he needs to be there. Gunnar Helm is just a guy that always seems to be in the right place at the right time whenever he's on the field. He's a better blocker than JT Sanders, so I'm expecting a very, very good year out of him. And I definitely expect Steve Sarkisian to really highlight Gunnar Helm this season. So I think that pro was a good word to describe Gunnar Helm.
Right. Sorry. I went with patient, right? When he's been waiting 3 years for this opportunity, the last 2 years behind the NFL tight end and JT Sanders. I know he was a 4th round pick, but he should have went higher for that, higher than that, excuse me. It was his fault. Yeah. He went in the 4th round with some, poor testing, but just patient. You know what I mean? Like, it's a testament, especially in today's, era of college football, to sit 3 years and wait for your opportunity. And now he has it. He's going to be playing in one of the best offenses in the country. So patient, he's waited his turn and now his turn is here. And, hopefully he makes the most out of it. Quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the offensive line. One word to describe Kelvin Banks, possibly the best offensive lineman in the country. Can't wait for that. Mm-hmm. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. Stock up on all of your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta, so you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. I actually had some ribs, baked beans, and potato salad today, so I'm all on the barbecue, right? Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That would cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you can earn cash that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. IBOTTA, Ibotta. All right, one word to describe Kelvin Banks. Lacey, go.
I said all pro. I said that, Gunnar Helm was pro. You got Kelvin Banks as an all pro, because this guy is going to go first round, be an all pro left tackle, and make a ton of money in the NFL. I can probably count on one hand how many quarterback pressures he's allowed in his last couple of years at the University of Texas, and I obviously just don't see that stopping anytime soon. he's talked about consistently as being dedicated to his craft, both on and off the field. He's a guy that's kind of like a silent leader. He doesn't really talk much, but leads by example type of guy. So that sounds like an all-pro to me. So it's one of those guys that you never, ever have to worry about. So I definitely use the word all-pro for him because I definitely can see a future. I'm like, that's so Raven. I can see the future and see him being an all-pro type guy in the NFL. But one word to describe Kelvin Banks Jr., Jonathan, what about you?
I said technician, right? This is where we watch him in the past game, really from the moment he stepped on campus, and obviously he's gotten better. But yeah, just technician, right? To be that good as a pass blocker, to be able to protect Quinn's blind side, you have to be, a technician. You can't just go out there with athleticism and, just wing it, right? So he's a technician in what he does. Hayden Connor at left guard as of right now. What's your?
I didn't mean to laugh while you were answering that, but you're gonna understand in a second why I thought that was funny.
Oh, okay.
For Hayden Connor, I said consistent. Honestly, I said this for DeAndre Moore earlier. I called him reliable, but honestly, you could use that exact same term for Hayden Connor because, he may not be the Lamborghini of the bunch. He may not be, the Rolls Royce, but he is very, very consistent. He's very reliable at his position. You know what you're going to get whenever you have Hayden at the position. So it may not be putting defenders on their booties, but he's gonna do his job and he's gonna protect you and do what he's got to do. So I said Hayden Connor in that aspect. But Jonathan, where is your head at? What about you?
I said replaceable, and I refuse to explain. Okay. The next one is Jake Majors. What's your word for Jake Majors?
Underappreciated. I said that Jake Majors is very underappreciated. I know he got a lot of flack in his younger years for, the pre-snap penalties, really stunting some drives there whenever we were already struggling offensively earlier on in his career at the University of Texas. So obviously it was pretty warranted in that aspect, but I think the development has really come on for him in the last couple of years. We really seen him step up to the plate a lot. I think a lot of Texas fans, like I said, really had their eyes open to the value that he brings whenever he went down versus Oklahoma last year. Whenever you had to bring in Connor Robertson, which props to Connor, obviously did a decent job considering the circumstances, a very emotional, high pressure situation. But the offense definitely took a second to start operating at a high level after Jake Majors went down. So I feel like from a Texas fan's perspective, I feel like he's been very underappreciated as of recently.
Yeah, for Jake Majors, I'm going to go with reliable, right? He has 41 career starts right now. After this season, he'll end up with over 50 career starts for the University of Texas. And I just don't think people understand how insane that is. Your favorite player at the 40 acres did not make 50 career starts. I promise you, right? So, Jake Majors is, last of a dying breed in college football. He's going to end the year with over 50 career starts. And that's just insane, right? Reliable. Devon Campbell, what's your word?
Brawler. Physical at the line of scrimmage, aggressive, scrappy. He gonna fight you. Like, he will drive you through the whistle, 2-year starter at the spot. And I'm just like, I'm really, really pumped to see what a guy with his mean streak can really do versus some SEC defensive linemen. So I thought brawler was like a perfect word to describe DJ Campbell.
Definitely a really good word. I went with freak, right? When you talk about somebody that big, first of all, I think a lot of people forget that, because of the way Kelvin Banks played, that Devon Campbell was the highest ranked player in our recruiting class that year, right? He was ranked higher than Kelvin Banks. And when you look at it, this is a player out of Bowie High School in Arlington, where I'm from, that played basketball, right? Can you imagine a guard that big that's able to play basketball, you know what I mean, to move down the court, run up and down the court, and be able to dunk and all of that. So he's a freak athlete, and I think we're going to really see it all come together this year. And somewhat of a contract year for Devon Campbell. He may not be a Texas Longhorn next season. Finishing up the offense, Cam Williams at right tackle. What's your word?
IHOP, the International House of Pancakes.
That's a good one. I like that one. That's a good
Big one. Cam Williams is the manager of the Pancake Factory. He is the definition of a large human. And I just think his power is going to have him hopefully pancaking some of those big, bad SEC defensive fronts. So I went with IHOP just because I thought it was funny and it made sense.
Right. That's a good one. I went with intriguing, right? The reason I say intriguing is because you look at his size profile, right? And huge. You know what I'm saying? I think like 6'6", you know what I'm saying? Like 350 plus, right? And we already know that he's going to be a dog and he's going to be able to move people in the run game. I'm so excited to watch the right side of that offensive line with Devon Campbell and Cam Williams. But we heard, all offseason he's been moving really well in pass sets. Just recently in this past scrimmage, they said that he did a really good job of staying in front of Ethan Burke. And Ethan Burke is a really rangy defensive end, right? So if he can be a dominant run blocker, but also show that he can be nimble with his feet and pass sets at that size, that you're looking at a 10 to 15 year tackle in the National Football League. So very intrigued to watch Cam Williams this year because he could certainly put himself on the map in terms of NFL circles, right? So we're going to move on to the defense. Speaking of Ethan Burke, what's your word for him?
This is why I laughed earlier when you said technician, because I called Ethan Burke the technician.
Okay.
So
he is.
A little bit different mindsets, but same words. So same wavelength too. I feel like he's just worked very diligently on improving his game from the moment he stepped on campus. He's truly become a student of the game. Sark has praised his work ethic, both on and off the field multiple times. And I think just bringing in, a Trey Moore, having a freshman come in like a Colin Simmons, it really just becomes an iron sharpens iron type of situation. And I think bringing those guys in has really stepped up his game as well. He's become very technically sound at the edge position, and I just expect to see some very vet plays made from Ethan Burke this upcoming season from a room that really, really needs it. So I'm excited to see what Ethan Burke is able to do, but that's the technician.
Right. I went with lacrosse because he's an All-American lacrosse player in high school. And how many players on the football team can say that they're probably better at another sport than football, right?
Yeah.
So went with lacrosse, and that athleticism certainly is translated on the field. Alfred Collins, what's your word for him?
Gemini. Sun, moon, light, dark, hot, cold, kind of catching my drift. While there are times he shows that really dominant, aggressive gameplay that we know he's capable of, there are still times he just really struggles with his consistency a little too often for my liking. His agility for his size has always been there. Like, he's always had the physical traits. He's always had the physical attributes. It's just one of those things that he's just, for whatever reason, struggled to consistently put them together. So I just want to see it more often now. So for now, I'm going to call him the Gemini, which I'm a Gemini. So I'm not, that's no shade. No tea, no shade to Alfred Collins, right, of course. But
Alfred Collins, I went with wild card. I think his floor, could be really, really low, or his ceiling could be really, really high, like you talked about. I think his ceiling could be a, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy type of player at defensive tackle, and his floor could be replaceable. Like, he could be replaceable on that defensive line. So, I think he's a wild card right now, and I think, he's going to be probably the biggest player that determines what type of defense the Texas Longhorns has this season. Vernon Broughton, what's your word for him?
Show me. We, similar situation with Alfred Collins, like I said, in the same boat. We see spurts of his athleticism, but he can be a little too inconsistent at times where he just becomes kind of non-existent, and we really have become accustomed, and Sark really enjoys, obviously, having that really, really tough physical defensive front in the run game and to be able to disrupt the quarterback. So I need him to show me. I need him to step up in game, maintain your technique, show your stamina, and show you can be that force on the defensive line. Show me.
Right. For Vernon Broughton, I went with quick, right? One of the things that came out of the last scrimmage was talking about Vernon Broughton's noticeably quick first step, right? And that's something we've seen on the field. Like Lacey said, not a ton, but we have seen it, right? And that's something that Byron Murphy really used to his advantage last year. So now Vernon Broughton in this bigger role, we heard about the quick first step in the scrimmage. I want to see it throughout the season. Quick, right? One more before we get to the money. Baron Sorrell, what's your word for him?
Solid. Just an all-around solid guy, relentless motor, constantly trying to make a play on either the quarterback or the ball, just always wants to be involved with the play at any given time. He's been one of the more consistent men that we've had on the edges in the past few years. And like Burke, I think having deeper talent in that room has just really elevated his game as well. So like I said, it's similar to an Ethan Burke, but I just think that we'll see Barron be a lot more or even more consistent this upcoming season. So I just think he's just been a very solid staple piece That's just what he is. He's solid.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same line with you. Mine was flashes, right? There's games where Barron Sorrell just absolutely takes over, right? Kind of the whole defense was dominant, but in the Alabama game, but then he backed it up the week after in the Wyoming game, right? He was dominant. I remember that big fourth down where we were still tied 10-10, I believe, or maybe it was 10-7 and they made it 10-10. But either way, you know what I mean? Like he showed up in those games, right? But then you see games like, Oklahoma State and, Washington. It's like, Barron, where are you? Right. So, he's not inconsistent by any means, but he has those really high highs. And then, he just has games where you're like, where's Barron Sorrell? Right. And so hopefully this season we see more of those games where he's just showing up, showing out, and being dominant on that defensive line. Because like you said, we need a lot more from our edges this year than we got last year. Quick word from our sponsors, and then we finish up with this last 7 players. To count it real quick, the last 7 players on the defense. We got to hear one word to describe every projected starter on the Texas Longhorns football team. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns also brought to you by FanDuel. Hold on. There we go. Let me get some shine camera time right now. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. One word to describe Trey Moore.
Specialist. I think he is a hidden gem in that edge room right now. He doesn't have that impeding size like a Colin Simmons or an Ethan Burke. So he doesn't have that he doesn't look very aggressive. He doesn't look very scary. He doesn't have that, like I said, impeding size on the edge, but he is a very special talent. And honestly, I even think he could end up leading the room in sacks when it's all said and done. So I called him the specialist because that's exactly what he does. He's like a sneaky little slithering snake, like slithering through, attacking your QBs when y'all least expect it. I think he's really, really, really going to wreak some havoc amongst those SEC defenses and cause some problems for some coordinators over there. So I called him the specialist. What about you?
Right. I said essential. I've said it a million times on the podcast, but the 3 most important positions in sports, in football, definitely, especially in modern football, is the quarterback, the person that throws the ball, the left or right tackle, depending on, what's your dominant arm, the person that protects the person throwing the football, and then the edge rusher, right? The person that puts the person that throws the football on their ass, right? And so Texas cannot win a championship this year without Quinn Ewers, Kelvin Banks, and Trey Moore being exceptional, right? Because you're going to need great quarterback play. You're going to need a great passing game. You're going to need somebody to protect the quarterback. You're going to need somebody to put the other team's quarterback, once again, on their ass. And that should be Trey Moore. That's what we brought him in to do. A specialist that is essential to the Texas Longhorns football team this year. Anthony Hill.
Staple. I feel like this is another one that's pretty self-explanatory, but I feel like this is going to be the year that, because obviously going into year 2 under his development, I think this is going to be the year that he really solidifies himself as that staple of our defense, kind of like how Jalen did in 2022 with that stellar 2022 season that he had. And then just mixed in with his natural freakish athletic ability, I just really think that he's going to make it known to everyone that of all people on this defense to fear, he's not one of them. He's not the one to mess with. So I called him the staple. What about you? Where are you at with Ant Hill?
Yeah, I said the chosen one. From the minute he stepped on campus, I said, he's going to win the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I firmly believe the moment he stepped out, we saw it in the Alabama game, just like Kelvin Banks in 2022 and 2023. His first big game, he was dominant, right? 2 sacks in that game. He showed his potential at the 40 acres. And I think by the time he leaves, he'll cement himself as one of the greatest defensive players and one of the greatest linebackers to ever grace the 40 acres. So the chosen one, we knew when he committed to Texas A&M, we absolutely needed him on this defense. And now he's going to etch his name in the history books at the University of Texas. He's the chosen one at the linebacker position. Jahdae Barron.
Vet.
What's your word for him?
Veteran. like I said, once again, that one I feel like is pretty obvious, but he is the veteran in the secondary, and I fully expect him to play like it this season. Sark has praised him multiple times in the past for his high IQ, his toughness, his awareness. So with there being a pretty young crowd around him, I really expect Jade to step up as a vet in that room and really show the maturation that he's had over the past couple of seasons, whether it be on, off the field, whatever. I just think we're really going to see that maturation from him this upcoming season.
Yeah, Jade Barron, I said underrated. I think he's had
Ooh.
2 really good seasons the last 2 years in the Big 12 and did not make an all Big 12 team. I'm not even sure if he was all Big 12 honorable mention, right? And I think that's absolutely criminal. So,
Insane.
He's pretty underrated, based on that. Jalen Gilbo. This probably was my toughest one, but Jalen Gilbo.
This one is the one that made me laugh the hardest because I just put DMX Bark. Absolute dog. Versatile, one of those guys that has already been talked about by Sark as someone that just has a natural athletic ability, a natural draw to the ball. He's extremely dynamic and can be utilized in multiple different schemes and matchups in PK's defense. So he's really, really aggressive in coverage, and I'm just really excited to see what Sark is able to do with him this upcoming season, especially since, we had a injury, and then last year we didn't really hear from him much. So I'm ready to hear from him a little bit more and hear that DMX bark. So
yeah, that's funny. RIP DMX for sure. My word is not a word, interceptionless, right? He's played in 16 games at the University of Texas. He does not have a career interception yet. So, obviously I'm expecting him to get his first interception this year, but as of right now, he is interceptionless, right? So that's my word for Jalen Gilbert. That was my toughest one, so I had to get creative. Malik Muhammad, what's your word for him?
Island. Put this guy on an island and let him go make a play. He has exceptional playmaking capabilities. We really, really saw him come on and assert himself as a dominant piece of the passing game later on in the season last year. And I fully expect that to translate and bleed into this upcoming season. So I said island. Please put this guy on an island and let him go to work because he will make a play, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I put champion, right? He's won a championship at every level of football he's played at, was a part of the first 2 championships at South Oak Cliff in school history, right? And he said committing to the University of Texas, hopefully he can keep that going. So, he's got at least 2 more years to do it, and hopefully we can win a national championship so he can continue to say that Malik Muhammad has won a championship at every level of football he's played at, from a youth to a grown man. Michael Taft, what's your word for him?
Einstein. Highest football IQ on the team. It's been notated multiple times by Sark, other teammates. His ability to read the offense and just to be in the right place at the right time is pretty much second to none on the team. I don't know what it was, but last season he had recorded 3 interceptions, and each one of them I was just like, dang, like he was just like Michael Taft was just there. He just ended up being in the right place at the right time. Like I said, called him Einstein because he's just kind of a student of the game. Really come on as a reliable piece on the back end last year. So I'm ready to see how that safety rotation ends up happening because we have a lot of really intriguing guys on the back end. So I'm excited to see what Sark is able to do with that type of rotation. But I said Einstein. Smarty.
Yeah, you talk about one of those interceptions. I was at the Houston game in Houston when he caught one of them a few rows up, behind him. So I had a front row seat to his greatness. I said inevitable, right? Whether it's Jaron Thompson, Keaton Crawford, we bring in Jalen Catalan, we bring in Andrew Makuba, any safety you can think of is somehow to walk on, from Austin. Michael Taft is still starting in front of all of them, right? We bring in Jalen Catalan, we're like, oh, we upgraded. Here comes Michael Taft. We bring in Andrew Makuba. And somehow Michael Taft is still first team, right? He's just inevitable, right? No matter who you bring in, it's like you said with Jake Majors. No matter how many times we try to replace him, he still ended up as your starting center. No matter how many different safeties we brought in to try to replace, I'm even saying not to try to replace Michael Taft, but no matter how many safeties we brought in to upgrade the position, Michael Taft always ends up on the field. He is literally inevitable. We're going to end the episode with Derek Williams. What is your word to describe Derek Williams?
5-star. I called him the 5-star because he is our 5-star on the back end. I think I'm most excited about seeing how he fits into the rotation. Because you have the reliability of Michael Taft, Mookie Taft, which is what they called it, which I think is a hilarious nickname, by the way. Mookie mixed in with the physicality that we know that Andrew Makuba is capable of. And so with Derek Williams' size and his just really aggressive play style, we really saw the difference that he made, even just in the energy that he brings to that defense, especially in the Sugar Bowl. You know, you saw the difference in the first half whenever he wasn't able to play versus the second half. You really saw the difference in the energy on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that I just really want to see that 5-star energy brought out a lot more this season. I'm ready to watch that 5-star work.
All right. I said the boot. You know what I mean? Like when you look at Derek Williams out of Louisiana, out of the boot. I was born in Louisiana. I'm a Louisiana animal somewhat. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at it, he's just one of those typical LSU DBs that we've been watching our whole lives that are just gritty and just dominant and just know what they're doing back there. And we did such a good job of pulling him away from LSU and getting him to come to the University of Texas. So, you know, Arch Manning and, you know, Derek Williams, I got a special place in my heart for them. Like I said, you know, I was born in Louisiana. Fort Polk. I'm Louisiana. Shout out the boot. So yeah, Derek Williams. You know, I got that special love for him. But like I said, you know, those LSU DBs we've been watching our whole lives. He's another one. He just happens to be in the burnt orange and white. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. John and Lacey signing out. Okay.
Okay.
Peace.